Hello, Michael. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you, and thank you for having me today.
Yeah, great. We are honored to have you in our podcast today, and we do not take it for granted. Going to spend some time to show us how you've built a great company you have today. Hello, viewers. Welcome to Talk to Phoebe podcast, where we explore leadership, growth, innovation, and people transforming the way business succeed. I'm your host, Phoebe. Today, I'm excited to welcome Michael Koory. Michael is the founder of Blue SalesFly, creator of Revenue Navigation Standard, architect of the Guide Selling System, and an expert in helping industrial and B2B organizations eliminate revenue drift and create predictable growth. His client ranges from manufacturing companies and distributors to healthcare organizations and managed service providers. He helps organizations increase revenue, improve margin, stabilize forecasts, shorten sales cycle, and create disciplined growth system that scale. Michael, you're welcome to our podcast.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for that introduction.
Yeah, thank you very much. So let's dive in. Michael, you've introduced a concept that immediately captures attention, revenue drift. What first led you to identify this hidden challenge?
Well, thank you. And what I had seen through multiple organizations is, and especially in manufacturing, a company that would obsess over providing quality and measuring quality standards to the 0.5% would readily accept 20% swings in the variance and variability of their sales forecast. And I thought those two don't fit together. You can apply standards to your revenue function, and you should hold it to the same level of standards that you do for the other practices within your organization. And I saw often, to get deals across the finish line, that they would discount at the end, or if there were product changes through the discovery process or through the sales process, those changes and those margins wouldn't be calculated. So at the end, they ended up with much less value for the deal than what they had originally started with. And there are ways that you can avoid that, and you should, as a business owner, have a much more consistent and predictable revenue stream than what traditional sales approaches deliver.
Awesome. Michael, what first led you to identify this hidden challenge, and what pattern keeps showing up across industry?
Well, like many people in sales, I fell into sales because plan A after college didn't work out. And I saw a lot of examples of people that did it very, very well through the years and people that didn't. And revenue is the lifeblood of an organization. It's required for enterprise to grow, regardless whether it's large or small. And traditional practices always seem to be just, well, find people that know how to sell and the sales will happen. But the world's a little more complex now and really always has been. It's really about identifying what the customer's issue is and where are they at versus where do they want to be, and can you help them uncover those barriers in between? And if you can, and if you make it easy and enjoyable for them to do business with you, then they'll hire you. And having that different approach as opposed to just pitching and presenting all the time, really trying to understand that requires more of a process mentality. And by result of doing that, you actually get better sales.
That's very great. So the next question is, why do CEOs often misdiagnose revenue drift?
Well, I think number one, they if they didn't come up through sales, if they don't have a sales background, they probably don't have a firm grip on how revenue gets into their organization. And so they often think, well, I just need to get a different sales leader. Well, VPs of sales, the average tenure across industry right now is somewhere between 16 and 18 months. So you end up cycling through a lot of different sales leaders, or you might try, doing some sort of sales training. But they never break it down to really uncover, what does our company do better than our competitors? How do we solve the problems better? And then what customers or potential customers would find more value in the way that we do business and the way we solve problems? If you uncover those two things and then you build the system to accelerate those, that's how you grow. But often it's just like, well, I just need to find a better sales leader. I need to put them through sales training. It doesn't get to the underlying root. And so I think the short answer is that they just haven't been exposed to that level of diagnosis to help uncover what's really causing whether the sales are declining or the margins declining or they're losing customers or losing deals, whatever the symptom is, they haven't gotten to the root cause of what's driving it.
Awesome. So how costly can revenue drift become when left unaddressed?
Well, if you are constantly giving back 1 to 5% of your margin on, just $10 million of sales, it can easily start adding up into the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And there's data to support that even existing customers, often we're not serving them as well as we could. And some studies show up to 80% of additional revenue is available. So if you have a customer that's doing $100,000 a year, that might only be 20% of what you actually could be serving that customer for. So it can be extremely costly depending on the volume of customers you're working with or the margins that you're dealing with.
So let's define what revenue drift actually looks like inside an organization. For leaders, hearing this for the first time, how do you define revenue drift?
Well, I start by asking them, questions. Are they constantly having to hire new salespeople or sales leaders? Do deals in their pipeline seem to just move from quarter to quarter to quarter? Do they hear a lot of, well, we're waiting to hear back from the customer, or we don't know exactly who's going to sign off on the deal or when? Is the sales team coming to the CEO toward the end of the deal and constantly asking for discount? Is the main reason why they hear wins or losses price? It's rarely price. That's a little secret insider. It's rarely price. Can the team, not articulate the value, or are they not doing proper diagnosis of uncovering what issues the client is trying to solve? Do they seem to demo? If it's a demo type business, are they demoing very early in the process before they're understanding? All of those are examples of things that can cause these deals to drift, the margin to get compressed, price pressure to come up. So those are a good litany of examples of what it might look like in their organization.
Awesome. So how does revenue drift impact profitability?
Well, if it's drifting, that means your margin's at risk. So it's putting pressure on your margin. And so it's reducing your profitability. And especially if you have more of a solution and complex sale, often there's opportunity to add more value through the interaction with the customer. And my belief is that the sales team or the revenue team, however you look at that, they should be actually enhancing customer value, which should be a margin increase, and taking away that focus on price and focus it on what are the cost impacts to the customer if they don't move, or if they do move, being able to have that discussion. That's where the margin is gained or lost.
What warning signs should CEO pay attention to immediately?
Well, if they've had more than one or two sales leaders in the past few months and the problems still persist, if deals seem to take a long time and the decision date continues to slip, if they have to be brought in on every deal to get it over the line, or if they are constantly having to give up price to win the deal, those are all things that if they start seeing that, they should have some concern. If there's not a consistent, reliable forecast, if they have to, before they go to their board, if they go to their their investors or their advisors, if they're constantly having to manipulate what the forecast is versus what the sales team is telling them, if they don't have that level of trust, and even sometimes they can feel it in their gut, if they just have this overriding sense of, I don't really trust what I'm hearing, that's a symptom that it's a system problem, not just a person problem.
Okay, awesome. You've said something that challenged conventional thinking. Traditional sales training improves technique, but it doesn't govern revenue behavior. Explain what you mean.
Well, so it's like a sports team. If I'm trained in baseball, but we're playing football, I'm going to really struggle because I went off and I had training in a particular domain. But if that training isn't made relevant to what my team is doing, it's not going to be additive to how we interact with our customers. So there should be specific milestones within a company's sales process or go-to-market strategy that reflect the culture and the strength of the organization. So if I'm off doing a training, it can certainly help on skill development. So if I struggle to, ask difficult questions, or if I if I don't have a good way of talking about money with people because of the way I was raised, you can certainly have some improvement there. But if you don't improve the whole team on the system that you're using, then you're going to still have inconsistent results.
Why do many organizations continue investing heavily in sales training? Why seeing limited growth?
Well, I think people are searching for answers. So what they know or what they've heard or what they've seen is like, well, the sales team isn't producing, so I have to go give them training. They don't often say, why aren't they producing? Have I not given them the right tools? Have I not given them the right language to use? Do we not have the right customer that we're talking to? They often see it as a person problem because that's one of the first places that everybody starts.
Yeah.
But Edward Deming, who was one of the founder of many of the lean and quality principles, he said a bad system beats a good person every time. So if you don't take the time to understand what sort of system you have underneath, and you have some level of system today, it's just whether or not it's working for you or against you. But I think that's why people default to, we'll go train them. And that can work if the training they get is pertinent to the type of customers and the type of sales and the type of way that you want to engage them. But if it's not, then it's left to somebody to connect the two. Otherwise, you won't get the result you're looking for.
Yeah. Still on this your quote. Can great salespeople still fail inside poorly governed system?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll go back to Deming's thing. If you have somebody that is an excellent hunter, they're excellent at going out and starting new conversations and finding customers and bringing those customers in. If you have that person managing a set of accounts, it's going to drain them. They're not going to be happy. It's not going to be utilizing their strengths. So, in the hunting role, they're a great salesperson. You put them in a role that doesn't utilize those skills, they will suffer. It'd be like asking a rabbit to climb trees. They can be great, but if you have them doing something that's not in their strengths, they're going to struggle.
Yeah, like a round hole in a square peg. Okay.
Exactly.
The other way around. Yeah. So what leadership blind spots contribute to revenue drifts?
I think a lack of them clarifying, who their customer is and what their unique strategic value is for that customer. And then giving the team the proper tools and systems to then go engage with those customers and help uncover the problems that they may be facing. And even now, because there's so much noise that everybody's dealing with, you really have to, a big blind spot is, are you proactively going to those customers and helping them see what they should be looking at even before they're ready to buy? That's really where the market is going, is everyone's trying to move further ahead to help the customer, be guided to where they're going to get their greatest success. And I put those right at the feet of leadership. It's your responsibility to identify who our best fit customers are and why do we serve them better? What problems do we solve for them? And then build the system backwards to support that.
Yeah, I think this is where your revenue navigation system standard comes in. What exactly is revenue navigation standard?
So when you get into the sales process, what traditionally happens is people have a process and they'll have some stages, and you can as a salesperson, you can easily move it up or move it down, put it wherever you want, say it's ready to close, but there's not any identified criteria or behavior from the buyer that would signal that that's really where the buyer's at. It's kind of, been left up to the salesperson. Well, I think it's going to close. It's almost closed. By the way, there's no such thing as almost closed. It just means we're waiting.
Yeah.
But if you have a standard in place, that in order to satisfy the requirements of this stage, the customer did these behaviors. We shared this meeting, or they did this assessment. We had a site visit and they agreed to a next step. They identified an action. We have a calendar date scheduled, something concrete to know that you've satisfied the requirements of that stage and can move it to the next. And that requires management to sit through and understand, how do we best take somebody from not being a customer to be a customer? What are the things, what's the arc of that buyer's journey that will signal to us that they are either leaning in and listening to us or pushing us further away? And having those standards built into your process, that's the key of having guidance in there. So I can't just decide, oh yeah, Phoebe, I had a meeting and I think it's going to close next Friday. You should be able to say, well, what signals did you pick up on? What did the buyer tell you? Have you tested the price? Have you quantified what the cost of staying where they are is? Have you quantified the cost of moving? Those are clear indicators from the buyer's behavior and from what the buyer is looking for to know that we are, at this stage versus somewhere else.
Okay, awesome. That's very good. So how is it different from traditional CRM system and sales methodology?
Well, what I did in my approach is I blended the methodology, the attitude, and the process into one.
Okay.
And I use a CRM called Membrane, which I happen to think is the best one out there, but I'll let whatever anybody uses, it should be a tool that the team wants to use. If you're constantly having to force them to go in and update their CRM, that means they're not using it, which means it's probably not helping them, which means it's just an expense that's sitting there. But building the methodology, blending the methodology and the attitude that with the way the team shows up with the process is what aligns everything so that everyone's leaning into using the tools that are going to help the company advance their growth. And that's where you put the standard. That's where you can put coaching in. That's where you can check on the pipeline. That's where you can, as the CEO, you should be able to look at your pipeline and if it says it has a weighted value of this, you should be able to trust that.
So that's very great. So what are the core pillars of this framework?
Pardon me?
I said, what are the core pillars of the framework?
So the core pillars, I take them through what I call the route to revenue, which starts with identifying the vision of what it is that they want to achieve. What are the organizational goals? And from that, I then help them uncover what is their strategic value proposition. What do they do better than everybody else? Quick signal, it's not your people, it's not your quality, it's not your product. It's probably something in and around that. Once we identify what that is, then we identify what their ideal client profile looks like. And some of this is a hypothesis and you have to go test, but you can look at, if you have current customers, you can look at the behaviors and you can interview them, which is even better, to find out why. Once you've identified the vision, the strategic value, and what your ideal client profile of customer looks like, then you examine the sales process. Do you have a process that's going to enable you to have better conversations with those customers? And I have a specific process I use called the guide process because I try to teach people to show up as guides and not salespeople. Then you customize that process, and then you train the sales team to that process, which is using your strategic value, your ideal. So all the training is aligned to what your customer does. And then you manage it and coach the behaviors to help scale them up.
Awesome.
So those are the main pillars of walking them through it.
Awesome. That's very great. So why is governance so important to sustainable growth?
Well, if you don't, it's just like if you're going to have quality standards or financial standards, if you don't have standards for your sales team, then it can go all over the place. And so sales is a discipline and a skill just like anything else. Again, if we stick on the sports analogy, if the team is depending on me to show up tomorrow and I'm out late and I'm eating bad food and doing things I shouldn't be, I'm not going to show up very well for the game the next day. So there needs to be standards that we hold ourselves to. And without them, it just becomes like, well, it's just some mystery thing that some people do really well and other people's don't. And it doesn't have to be that way. You have to have standards.
Awesome. So how do leaders create discipline without creating bureaucracy?
Oh, that's great. Well, so yeah, the biggest thing that salespeople are always saying, like, well, I don't want them in my accounts. I don't want them, looking over my shoulder, et cetera, et cetera. I think it starts with the culture of the organization. They're not my customers, they're our customers. And we want to, engage as a team. And, we don't want the CEO to have to come in and close every deal, but we certainly want the CEO to come in to meet their CEO and to expand those relationships and get the company more deeply immersed into our customers so that they know that we are part of the team. And so, the bureaucracy, what I have found with my customers is when the process is finely tuned, the internal meetings go way down because, pipeline reviews are crisp. You can look at something in the CRM and trust that it is where it should be,
Yeah.
or maybe just ask a few questions in coaching to figure out, is it in the right spot? Did it adhere to the right criteria? It should lower bureaucracy because then everybody is playing their role as they should, and the system is working as it should.
Awesome. So one of the biggest frustration for CEO is unpredictable forecasting. Why do forecasts fail?
I think because all of the stuff that we talked about previous is not in place. There's not a qualification or disqualification of what makes a deal fit for the pipeline. Does it look like our margin's going to be right? Is it the type of customer we want to work with? Have we clearly identified a problem that they want to solve? Do we understand what they've done so far? Do we understand what they've tried? Like, all of those questions need to be uncovered, if not very early in the process, even before we put it into the formal sales process to say, hey, we're going to start allocating resources to try and win this, try to win this deal.
Awesome.
And lacking any of the items that we've talked about further or previous is what causes the forecast to just, vary wildly.
Okay, that's very great. So what is stage integrity and why does it matter?
So staging integrity, that's the key part of the revenue navigation standard, in that if I'm moving, for instance, in my process, it goes greet, understand, impact, decide, and elevate. So if I'm moving them from the understand phase, the main goal of understanding is we have mutual agreement between us and the customer on where they are at. What's the current condition look like? What's it costing them? What are they losing because of it? What is the current condition? Once we understand that, by going through that process, we develop trust because people want to be understood. They want to be heard. Once we have a measurable or demonstrable show of trust that they shared something internally, they shared some of their personal goals, when we can check that box that we know we have mutual understanding because of a behavior we saw from the customer, we have the opportunity to talk about the cost of the pain, and that's moving to the impact stage. And sometimes that can happen in one meeting, sometimes that might take several meetings. But that invitation to go deeper and explore what it's going to cost them if they stay versus where they're going to go. If you want to get the real underlying issues, you have to develop that trust first. And so maintaining those stages and not jumping ahead to, well, they're going to decide next week. Well, not if you haven't quantified the cost of staying versus the cost of doing something new, because over 65% of the deals that are started by salespeople end in no decision. And the reason they end in no decision is because the customer did not see any value, or they did not have the resources, or they didn't have the team, or there's some reason why they chose to just stay where they were and deal with the costs of that versus trying something new.
Awesome.
And so if you spend the time to get that, the understand and impact right, you can relieve some of the issues of deals just dying on the vine. And some of them still will.
Yeah, talking about behavior. What behavior creates focus instability?
I think having a sense of what you're contributing to the company, beyond just the revenue. Sales teams are sometimes kind of off to the side from the rest of the team. I think, focus is knowing what your job is, knowing you have the tools to do it, knowing you know how to do it. And if you're struggling, you have the openness of the organization that I could come to you and say, Phoebe, I don't seem to be handling this well. Can you help? There was a big study that was done recently by Membrane, the CRM company, that uncovered a huge deficit in coaching of salespeople and coaching of sales teams. That focus can be dramatically increased by just spending time coaching people through the process, coaching them on their skills, coaching them on, how they move through this process and how they move with getting customers into the process.
Okay, awesome. So how can sales managers become a better inspector of pipelines health?
I think the easiest way is to get a more rigorous disqualification criteria. Have a more rigorous standard for what quantifies something to be in the pipeline. And then look at your pipeline and understand the stages that your buyers go through before they make a final decision. And then how can your team interact with them to help them and guide them on what is going to be the best decision for their business? Because if if you help somebody get what they want, more than likely they're going to bring you along with them.
That's awesome. So, what does a healthy, disciplined pipeline look like?
Well, it looks nice and clean, and deals move through it really fast. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it is. It like that, that if your average time to close is 90 days, that when you put it in there on this date, more than likely you're going to have a decision on this date. Not always, but you can look at it and know that you see movement on deals, you see movement from stage to stage, you see a lot of interaction from the buyer, you see interaction from the team. It's actually, a flowing, moving entity, and not just, a place where things go to gather dust and cobwebs.
Awesome. So, how do organizations move from hope-based forecasting to data-driven forecasting?
Well, you again, I'm going to sound like a broken record,
Oh, go
but
ahead.
you start by those fundamentals. What are the organizational goals, and what do we do better than our competitors? What is our unique strategic value? And then what customers are we going to serve the best that would appreciate that? And then build that process to support that. I mean, those really are the key fundamentals for creating a revenue system that's going to stick. And then if you have existing customers, are you coming to them with ideas and insights about their business? Because if this cup is my product, I see more of those cups in a few months than many of my customers will see in years.
Yeah.
So our company knows all kinds of information around those cups. There's all sorts of insights about storage and size and color and shipping and utilization and hot versus cold. I mean, there's numerous things that would be valuable to our customer if we talk to them about how they want to ship them, store them, use them, sell them. Those are the insights we should be going to them with. The market's going this way. We're seeing consumer trends this way. Helping them navigate, and that's going to augment their business is the real key to showing up and giving that value. So the customer's like, I can't do business without Phoebe. I've got to have Phoebe's business.
Awesome. Growth means nothing if profitability disappears. Most companies celebrate revenue growth while quietly losing margin. Why is margin erosion such a hidden threat?
Well, if you're shipping, a stack of cash with every order you put out the door, you're going to be out of business pretty soon. And I think we leaders need to look at how they're compensating their team. I still am a big fan of variable compensation, but there's a lot of companies that are starting to look at straight salary. I think bonuses and everything should be paid on the margin and not just top line sales. I have a few customers right now that part of our goal in the engagement is to help them get bad fit customers out because they're not making the margin that they should for the amount of headaches and short time frames and things that they have to deal with. It's like, let's go find a customer that's not going to do that, and we can then invite this customer to find somebody else to help them.
Awesome. That's very good. So what are margin guardrails?
Margin guardrails are the criteria of what you will or won't accept based on a current customer and a certain order size. So I've seen some companies that they just artificially raise the floor to the sales team. If you're letting the sales team do the pricing, I'd be very careful of that, by the way. But it's like, we're only going to accept orders within, this margin criteria. What's the upper and what's the lower limit? So that we don't get something in that is going to, we find out we're losing money on every order that we ship.
That's very good. So how can leaders prevent discounting from becoming a growth strategy?
Well, we've seen all sorts of retailers that, and we probably know retailers, all your listeners probably know retailers. It's like, oh, I really like to buy that, but I'm going to wait because I know they go on sale, every month. And then all the orders spike up at the end of the month. That can be a strategy. In B2B, that's hard. And so you really have to show up in a way that you're adding value to the customer. And the way you add value is you help them see what is it costing them in the current state and what would they gain if those barriers went away. And that variable is where the margin is. And that the variable is where your solution is viewed more than just the price, because they're seeing the value improvement in their business. So they're not going to be as concerned about the unit price. They're going to look at if I invest 50,000, I'm going to get 500,000. I will take a 10-to-1 improvement all day long.
Awesome.
And you're not getting pressured for margin deals.
All right, that's very great. So, what conversation should CEOs be having with sales leaders around profitability?
I would, they should be, number one, if they don't have a clear margin criteria in place, they should put that in place. I would talk to the sales leaders about, can we make the variable compensation be based off margin instead of top line sales? And then more fundamentally, are we articulating the value of our services or products in a way that helps the customer see where that cost improvement or ROI or reduced work time, whatever that is that the way that we're having conversations, or is it just like, is it a price situation? And there's certain things that, I'm not Pollyanna about it. I know there are certain price sensitivities in markets.
Yeah.
But if and there are actually companies that make good money on, being able to play the price game because their operations are so tight. But for the sales team, I would want to be looking at customer value, customer movement, how you can help that customer improve what they're doing. Because if you're going to be able to deliver a 10-to-1 ROI, for example, that if that's part of what their goals are organizationally, it's going to be hard for them to say no.
Okay, that's very great. So, what separates companies that scale predictably from those that constantly struggle?
The adherence to some sort of systematized approach to how they engage with customers. If you don't have a defined playbook on how you want to work with customers, it's always going to be, reactionary and event-based. You can have a bluebird drop in and it can be a great deal, or you can have the bluebird fly away and then you're stuck.
Yeah.
But looking at some level of systemization is to me what separates the good from those that are struggling.
Awesome. That's very good. So why is focus discipline so critical?
Well, because it's so easy to be distracted, and it's so easy to go chasing things that may not pan out. And so being focused on, what are your goals this week? What do I have to, what customers do I have to reach out to? Is there certain internal work that needs to be accomplished in order to get the client to move, or vice versa? We have to maintain that focus and intent, because otherwise things just lag, and life gets in the way.
Yes.
People go on vacation, people get sick. If the sales team is not helping guide these things along and helping lead the customer through where they can, all sorts of distractions can come into play.
Awesome. So what role does executive leadership play in maintaining growth discipline?
I think they own it. They have to set the standard. They have to set the expectation. They have to enable their sales leadership to enact and operate in it. But I love Edward Deming. He puts all of the system responsibility on leadership. If you're a CEO, you should own the way you want your company to go to market. And it should be a reflection of the culture and the values of the organization, and your team should engage that way. So I think they are solely responsible.
Awesome. That's very good. So how important is weekly governance cadence?
Vital, because it goes back to the focus and discipline.
Yes.
We should start Monday where I say, Phoebe, I'm going to accomplish these 3 things this week because it's going to have these impacts. On Friday, you should say, Mike, did you do it? And then be ready to tell me what you're going to do Monday. It's those tight cadences. And they can't be long storytelling meetings. It should be, you should be very crisp. This is what we're focusing on this week, and why, and what resources are needed, and then did you get it done, and then rinse and repeat. It's like a lot of what we do in sales is like going to the gym. I might not want to do it today, but I better go do it, because if I skip one day, then I skip 3 days, then I've skipped a month, and all of a sudden, now I'm way behind.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. So what habit creates long-term revenue predictability?
What habit?
Yes.
I think once you've built the system, then it's that weekly engagement of operating the meetings, operating your pipeline reviews crisply, and just operating the system. So I would say the one habit that really sticks to it is that you then, once you've built the system, you operate it and you adhere to that, and you only adjust if you see something not working. And there's always going to be subtle adjustments and tweaks that you do along the way, but you want to operate that system. You want to make your calls when you need to make your calls, do your do your client visits, have your clients come visit you, whatever the motions are. Once you have it, then you got to do it every day.
Yeah, awesome. Michael, you've helped organizations achieve extraordinary results. Can you share some examples?
Yeah. So one company, we there weren't any really updated marketing and sales programs. So we modernized the sales process. We focused on the strategic value. We changed the way that we were interfacing with the customers. That company grew from 6 million to just under 50 million. Now, not all of that was organic growth. We did have some acquisitions in there, but our organic growth was, in the double digits every year. I have a small company that similar situation. They have a lot of internal challenges that are preventing them, but we've worked around that on the team, and we're identifying a clear criteria on what they want to go after versus what they don't, and that has grown over 25%.
Wow.
We had another company that they cleaned up a lot of what they were doing on the go-to-market side, on the sales process. We put in the guide sales process. We trained the sales team, and that company recently sold for multiples above the market.
Wow.
So when you can get that revenue part of it in place, especially if you're a founder that you're looking to sell sometime,
Yeah.
you don't want to be the sole salesperson, because if you are, that's going to dramatically reduce the value.
Awesome. That's very good. So you specialize in industrial and complex B2B sales environment. What makes these businesses unique?
I think the length of the sales cycle and the need to really uncover what are the issues at facing either the customer, well, actually facing the customer. And that's been most of my career. So the complex things, the quick little process of greeting the customer, understanding them, determining the impact, figuring out how they decide, and then elevating them, really making them better. That can happen in a smaller, more transactional sale, which I'm working with a client on that right now. But I like the big, complex, tangled up situations, because being able to make sense of that and helping both the company and helping their customers, personally, that's very rewarding to help streamline that.
That's very great. So why do traditional sales methodologies often struggle in industrial market?
I think it's the traditional methodologies, a lot of them are still good. The real problem is they never get translated specifically to the customer and to the customer's situation. And I think that's where the big gap is. The traditional companies that are out there, they all work in some capacity.
Yeah.
But it's translating that to your specific company, to your specific client base, and how you want to interact. That's where I think they fall down. And when you can connect that, then you end up with something that is your methodology, not, we do this, or we do this, or we do this. It should be, my belief is it should be yours. At the end of the day, it should be, this is how we go to market. This is our way.
Awesome. That's very great. So how long do buying cycle impact revenue governance?
So if it's a long buying cycle, that's one of the biggest areas where you can leak, or you can drift, because what you originally started trying to solve often transforms as you get further in. And if you don't have clear criteria between you and your customer and you and the rest of the team, especially if it's some complex manufacturing process, you can burn margin really quick. And so having, strict adherence in each area to know that, hey, if we're changing the prototype this way, that means we have to change the pricing, or if we change material, we have to make sure we update the material cost. If they change the order quantity or the timing quantity or the assembly, all of that you can leak what looks like pennies and dollars, at one point, that can add up to thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars later on. So the longer your sales cycle is, the more rigor that you need to keep it. And the customer can get distracted, timings can slip, and all of that. You can wind up where you had the capacity to do it in August, and now they slip to October where your other big order is, and now you're scrambling, you're having to add shifts, or it's vital in the longer sales cycles.
Okay, that's very good. So what mistake do industrial companies make when trying to grow?
I think one of the easiest ones is they just go hire more salespeople. We want to grow, and we're just going to hire more salespeople and send them out. And that might be the right answer. Or you could look at it and say, let's look deeply at our existing customers. Are we serving them the best way we could, and is there more business that we could gain from people that already know us? But I think probably the short answer would be they often just hire more people and send them out thinking that they're going to get more sales in.
Yeah, okay. That's awesome. So, in an era of AI, technology is also changing how revenue organization operates. AI is also transforming sales organization. What excites you most about AI?
What excites me most about AI is how we can use it to serve the customer better. When I look at all of the big technological advancements, going back to the start, salespeople used to walk or ride horses, and then they had trains, and then they had cars, and then they had cell phones, and then they had email and social media, and now we have AI. At every technological change, there's those people that are going to use it to just chase scale and efficiency. Everybody that's listening to you probably has an inbox filled with thousands maybe of emails that they're not going to read, or their social media is filled up. But what AI has the capability of doing, when you grasp its utility, it can get rid of some of the mundane things that could free up more time with the customer. You can learn more about the customer. You can learn more about the markets that your customer is in, and you can help give them advance warning of something that you see coming.
Yeah.
That's what excites me about it. That it to me, and there's going to be those, and there already are those that are like, well, gee, we could send 100,000 emails before, now we can send 10 million. That's not going to help the customer. But if it's like, we knew this about the customer, but now we can know 10 times more, and we can help them, now 100 times more, to me, that's what excites it. And then freeing up some of the mundane tasks that keep salespeople tied to their desk, instead of going to see customers, that's what excites me.
Awesome. So how can AI help organizations dictate revenue drift?
Great question. So I'll tell you, on the one side, our customers are already doing it. They're starting to examine their vendor base, and they're starting to look at the vendors and using AI and contract management to say, hey, you're supposed to have done A, B, and C, but you haven't, so now you owe this to us.
Yes.
So customers are using that on their suppliers already. But if we turn that around, you can have, there's AI models that you can build into your CRM that if you don't have clear criteria, you can have AI go through and scan your deals to decide which ones are off, which ones look good, which ones look bad. If you don't have a CRM, there are people that are programming their own little, kind of self-made CRM, and like, here's what I need to do today, and here's what I talked about to the customer. You can use it to transcribe and copy meetings, so your note-taking is better. I think we're only starting to crack the surface on what is going to be possible.
Yes. Okay, awesome. So can AI improve forecasting accuracy?
Once you have good data going in, absolutely. Yeah, I think absolutely. When you start to examine your data, like if you get a good system, because AI is only good with good structured data. So once you get good data in and you start to test the veracity of your pipeline, I think it can play a very key role in that. And the one company I'm working with already has an insight engine built in where they're starting to use that to augment, flag this deal because this wasn't done, or this one looks like it's, ready to go even more so.
That's awesome. So at the end of the day, revenue performance reflects leadership. What leadership behavior creates predictable growth?
I think the leaders that lean into wanting to serve the customers and really, engage them in a different way, and taking the time to put the right system in place and then run that system, empower the people to utilize the tools and the systems, having an openness to make changes if changes are needed, but also the strength for the tough conversations and the accountability that, if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, you should be able to come to me and say, hey, Michael, what's going on? Do you not know how, or are you just not willing to? Because one we can coach, the other one we have to have a little more difficult conversation about.
Yeah, awesome. So what leadership mistake contributes most to revenue drifts?
I think probably always defaulting to it must be the person. I think that's probably just like it's, the default when growing, we'll just hire more people. I think it's often the default, well, it must just be this person, instead of looking at the underlying system to be, what are they, What obstacles are they trying to overcome every day to do what they need to do? And I think it's like a person versus system view is what causes most of it.
Okay, that's awesome. So what advice would you give CEO trying to scale from 25 million to 150 million?
Well, I would go right back to the beginning. Why do you want to go from 25 to 150? What tools, what strategic value, what way can you serve the customer more that is going to be valuable to them? What customers are there that you can go serve to drive that revenue? What tools do you have? What people do you have? What systems are we going to build? And then build that system to go after that scale. I use the same model if they're starting or if they're going to then go to the next level.
Awesome.
Because at the end of the day, it's about, do you solve a problem for the customer and do you engage with them in a way that makes it easy for them to understand and that they want to do it with you?
Yeah, that's very great. Michael, after years of helping organizations create predictable growth, what do you believe is the single biggest factor separating companies that scale successfully from those that stall?
I would say it's looking at your revenue operations as a system and understanding that you have to have a systematic approach versus just finding somebody that can sell.
Yeah.
You can find people to sell, but like the earlier example, if I put a hunter in an account management role, they're going to be miserable and vice versa. So I think the biggest thing is not understanding that it's a system and it requires management and expertise, just like you would for your manufacturing operations, your finance operations, your human resources operations. You should apply the same rigor to your sales function.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's very good. So if every CEO listening today could fix just one thing tomorrow that will immediately improve growth predictability, what would that be?
I would ask if you have a sales team, have each one of them come in and tell you what the strategic value of the organization is, what problems they solve for their customers, and who their best customers look like.
Awesome.
And they can't mention the product. They have to be able to talk about the problems that they solve for their customer. And that would be, I'll guarantee it'll be eye-opening for them because that will show you that if you have 5 people, you probably have 5 different stories.
Yeah.
And then you look at that 5 people, right? Which one is selling the most? Is that margin-rich business? Is it business that we want or not? If you did that one exercise, it'll tell you a lot.
Awesome. That's very good. Michael, thank you for joining us today and sharing your insight. One of the biggest takeaways from today's conversation is that growth isn't just about generating more opportunity. It's about governing how opportunities move through your business. Revenue drift doesn't happen overnight. It happens quietly through inconsistent behavior, weak discipline, poor visibility, and lack of accountability. But as I have shared today, governance around revenue is something that is more valuable and predictable, profitable, and sustainable growth. So we want to thank you for joining us today and, of course, giving us the insight that we never really thought, honestly, because your niche or your practice is like a very specialized area. When you talk about sales, not many people see it from this perspective. They see it more or less in final delivery. Being able, the way you dissected from the salespeople, from the skill they have, or from what they are taught, is something that most time we overlook. That's why most of the time we're having a square peg in a round hole and it doesn't work. And we want to say thank you, Michael. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, and for everybody listening today, we want to say until next time, lead with discipline, execute with clarity, and remember, revenue growth isn't accidental, it is governed. I'm your host, Phoebe, and this is Talk to Phoebe podcast. Thank you very much, and thank you, everybody. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Yeah, all right.